Welcome to The Debate. Today, we are immersing ourselves in the lethal, deeply magical world of Sarah J. Maas's A Court of Thorns and Roses.
Yeah, but we are setting a very strict parameter for our analysis today.
Right, yes, we are looking exclusively at the events, the actions, and the character developments within this first book alone.
Exactly. No future knowledge allowed. I mean, we are judging these characters and their choices based entirely on who they are from the moment Fair hunts that oversized wolf in the freezing winter woods, right up to the bloody, traumatic aftermath under the mountain.
And the central question we're exploring today is a big one. Based purely on the text of this first installment, who demonstrates that they are the better partner for Fair? Is it Tamlin, the High Lord of the Spring Court, or Rysand, the High Lord of the Night Court?
A highly contested topic for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And I'll be taking Tamlin's side today. Because if we really look closely at the text, he offers a foundational romance built on genuine love, fierce protection, and mutual healing.
And I am going to push back hard on that. I'm arguing for Rysand, because while his methods are deeply morally gray,
Deeply.
right, sometimes outright manipulative,
Mm-hmm.
but he is the better match. He actively empowers Fair, he treats her as an equal survivor, and honestly, he is the absolute only reason she survives an impossible lethal environment.
Well, let's start by looking at the foundation of what Tamlin provides, because I think it's completely misunderstood.
Okay, lay it out for me.
What we see in the Spring Court is a classic redemptive romance, but it's targeted at very specific psychological trauma. I mean, we have to remember where Fair comes from.
Right.
She is a 19-year-old human who has been the sole provider for her family since she was 8 years old. Her entire baseline reality is starvation, freezing cold, and the crushing burden of keeping people alive.
It's absolute bare minimum survival.
Exactly. So when she arrives at the Spring Court as a hostile prisoner, Tamlin doesn't just, put her in a gilded cage. He systematically dismantles her core trauma
By giving her money, essentially.
by ensuring her mortal family is wealthy and safe. He surgically removes the foundational anxiety that has defined her entire existence. And once her physiological needs are met, he gives her the space to actually heal.
Yeah, the painting.
Right, he cleans out a gallery for her. He gives her paints. He is nurturing a soul that has been completely starved of beauty. And all of this culminates in his ultimate act of selfless love.
Sending her away.
Yes. He knows he only has 3 days left to break Amarantha's curse, 3 days to save his own life and his entire court from eternal enslavement. And what does he do? He chooses to send Fair back to the mortal realm.
Mm-hmm.
He gives up his last hope purely to keep her safe. That, to me, is the bedrock of a profound protective partnership.
Well, I come at it from a very different way. While Tamlin undoubtedly offers a sheltered fairy tale, it's an illusion. What Rysand offers is a pragmatic partnership rooted in stark reality.
A harsh reality, though.
Sure, but Tamlin's world requires Fair to be passive, to be safe. Rysand operates in the brutal truth of their environment, and he requires her to be active. I mean, consider the absolute starkest contrast in the book.
Which is?
When Fair is literally rotting in a dungeon under the mountain, her arm is shattered, the bone is protruding, she is actively dying of an infection from fighting that giant worm. And where is Tamlin?
He's trapped.
He is completely absent. He cannot or will not risk himself to save her. Rysand is the one who steps into that cell and heals her.
Yeah, but he extracts a brutal cost for that healing. Come on.
He does. He extracts a hard bargain, 1 week a month in the Night Court. But look at the underlying mechanism of that bargain. He is recognizing her inherent agency.
By forcing her into a contract?
By betting on her to win that trial. He treats her not as a fragile human who needs to be hidden away from the world's horrors, but as a weapon capable of conquering them. He keeps her alive by acknowledging her strength, whereas Tamlin keeps her alive by ignoring it.
I'm sorry, but I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning at all. You're applying an adult standard of informed equal partnership to a situation where Fair is severely outmatched.
She's the one who chose to go under the mountain.
Yes, but she is a mortal who has zero comprehension of the immortal, magical politics she's just been thrown into. When we talk about how Tamlin protects her, his sheltering is pure because it allows her to experience peace for the very first time in her life.
Okay, he physically protects her by going out and hunting creatures like the Boggas so she doesn't have to face them. But he doesn't tell her what the Boggy is. He literally just tells her not to look at it.
Because she doesn't need to carry that burden. And he also protects her emotionally. Let's not forget he tries to help her learn to read. He keeps her wordless. He writes poetry for her.
Poetry doesn't stop monsters.
No, but he is deliberately building an environment where she doesn't have to be in a constant state of hypervigilance. Look, think of Tamlin's deception regarding the curse like a parent shoving a child out of the path of a speeding car.
A child?
Yes, just bear with the analogy. The child might hit the pavement, they might get scraped up, and they certainly don't understand why they were just violently pushed out of the way. But the parent's absolute priority is preventing their complete annihilation.
Right, but
Tamlin sending her away, keeping her in the dark about Amarantha, that was him pushing her out of the path of that car.
that's a compelling argument, but have you considered that it exposes the fatal flaw in Tamlin's entire approach? You just compared her to a child.
As an analogy for the power dynamic, yes.
Right, but he treats her like a child. And if you treat your partner like a child in a world full of monsters, you ensure they will be eaten the absolute second you aren't looking.
But he is looking. He is actively guarding the borders.
Until he can't. Tamlin's branded protection inherently strips Fair of essential information, which strips her of her ability to survive independently. By keeping the nature of the blight and the specifics of his curse a total secret, he leaves her deeply, critically vulnerable.
He was bound by the curse. He couldn't tell her everything.
But because she doesn't understand the real danger, what does she do? She actively goes out, traps a Suriel to get answers, and nearly gets murdered by the Naga. She's wandering around a lethal magical realm essentially blindfolded by Tamlin's good intentions.
I mean, she's stubborn.
Sure, she's stubborn. But Rysand, conversely, doesn't coddle her. When she demands to know things under the mountain, he gives her the harsh truths. Tamlin builds a wall around her to keep the monsters out. Rysand gives her the tools to survive when the monsters inevitably break through the wall.
I think we have to look at the friction between human trauma and immortal timeframes here to really understand Tamlin's choices. This is crucial.
How so?
Tamlin has lived for centuries. To an immortal being, keeping a secret for a few weeks to guarantee a human's safety is just a blip in time. It's a temporary tactical maneuver.
But she isn't immortal. Not yet.
Exactly. For a 19-year-old human girl, those few weeks are her entire reality. The friction between how an immortal perceives a protective delay versus how a human experiences being kept in the dark is immense.
Right, which is why it doesn't work.
But Tamlin isn't trying to infantilize her. He's managing a centuries-old curse and trying to keep a fragile mortal alive in the crossfire.
But that protective bubble has a fatal flaw. It is entirely dependent on Tamlin's control over his environment. And when Amarantha shatters that illusion and drags them all under the mountain, Tamlin's philosophy of sheltering is suddenly impossible.
Well, the environment fundamentally changes.
It does. So let's look at how their philosophies hold up when safety is no longer an option. When the bubble pops, how does Tamlin pivot?
He pivots the only way he can. When Fair enters Amarantha's domain, Tamlin's passivity, the fact that he sits on the throne beside Amarantha and doesn't visibly react to Fair, is constantly criticized as weakness or abandonment.
Because it is.
No, it is a calculated strategic necessity. Lucian explicitly explains the psychology of this affair. Tamlin has to completely bury his emotions. Amarantha is a sadist. She literally feeds on jealousy and suffering.
I know. I read the same book.
Then you know that if Tamlin showed even a fraction of how much he cared for Fair, Amarantha would have taken that affection and used it to torture Fair 100 times worse. His silence, his stone-cold demeanor, is a shield. It is the absolute only weapon he has left to protect her from Amarantha's direct, focused wrath.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. Passivity, even when it is strategically justified, borders on absolute uselessness when the person you love is actively being slaughtered in front of you.
He couldn't act without getting her killed.
Tamlin's shield of silence does not stop Fair from bleeding out in the mud. It is Rhysand who actively intervenes. Let's look at the second trial. Fair is trapped. The metal spikes are coming down to crush her, and she can't read the riddle to pull the correct lever.
Right, she's illiterate.
And what does Tamlin do? He sits there. He does absolutely nothing while she is seconds away from being crushed. It is Rhysand who uses his magic to send a spike of pain in your mind, forcing her hand away from the wrong lever and guiding her to the right one.
But look at how Rhysand operates in that moment. He doesn't just guide her. He actively tortures her mind to do it.
He uses pain because pain cuts through panic. And let's look at the aftermath of that trial. Fair's breaking down on her cell. She is completely shattered, ready to give up and die.
Because of everything she's being put through.
Yes. And Rhysand comes into the cell and he licks the tears off her face. Now on the surface, it looks cruel and mocking, but look at the mechanism, the actual biochemistry of what he is doing.
Biochemistry, really?
Hear me out. He knows that sadness and despair lead to lethargy. Despair in a damp, freezing subterranean cell leads to hypothermia, parasympathetic shutdown, and a quiet surrender.
Okay.
Anger, on the other hand, spikes adrenaline. It raises her core body temperature. It triggers her fight or flight response. He is physically weaponizing her emotional state to keep her heart beating. He incites her fury because fury keeps her breathing.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a completely different perspective on Rhysand's so-called interventions.
Go for it.
The mechanisms he uses are horrific, and we cannot just brush past the utter violation of her autonomy. He forces her to drink Fey wine every single night until she blacks out.
To numb her,
He takes complete control of her mind and body. He dresses her in skimpy clothes and parades her around the throne room covered in body paint to mark her as his property.
Wait, let me explain the pain.
He makes her dance for the court while she is chemically incapacitated. I mean, that isn't a partnership. That is possession masquerading as protection. He absolutely strips her of her dignity and her free will.
Okay, think of Rhysand like a triage surgeon in an active war zone. When a triage surgeon resets a shattered femur without anesthesia, the patient screams.
Yes, but
It is agonizing, it is ugly, and it is violent. But it is absolutely necessary to save the limb and stop the bleeding. Rhysand drugs her with that wine specifically to keep her mind numb to the horrific, mind-breaking trauma of Amarantha's court.
taking away her bodily autonomy to do it?
Sarah J. Maas writes it almost as an act of mercy, because while she is under the influence, she is forgetting the horrors she's enduring. And the body paint? He paints her body so that no other predator in that court dares to touch her. He is marking her with his power to ensure her physical safety from the monsters surrounding them.
Oh, and when he forcibly kisses her in the hallway, was that a medical intervention too?
He ruins her paint and forces that kiss in the hallway strictly to save her and Tamlin from Amarantha. Amarantha was walking down the hall and was about to discover their secret rendezvous.
He still assaulted her to do it.
If Amarantha had fed them, she would have killed them both instantly. So Rhysand creates a distraction, a brutal, highly uncomfortable distraction. It is an ugly medicine, but in a lethal, subterranean prison where one wrong step means endless torture, it is the only medicine that works. Tamlin's strategic passivity left her to rot in the dark. Rhysand got his hands bloody to keep her alive.
But you're discounting the entire emotional core of the book's climax, which completely revolves around Tamlin and the immense power of their bond.
The climax revolves around Fiery surviving.
Let's look at the final trial. She has to stab 3 innocent Fae in the heart to break the curse. The third Fae she unmasks is Tamlin. Amarantha's riddle, the one Fire has been trying to solve the entire time she's under the mountain, the answer is literally love.
Yes, a classic fairy tale trope.
Thera figures out the riddle. She figures out that Tamlin has a literal heart of stone because of the curse. And she drives the ash dagger into his chest purely because of her profound, unshakable faith in their connection. She trusts him with her life.
She does, and it costs her life. I mean, she dies immediately after.
But observe what happens the absolute second the curse is lifted. The moment Tamlin's heart of stone turns back to flesh and his High Lord power is restored. Does he remain passive?
No, he doesn't.
No. He violently, immediately defends her. He crosses that room and he literally tears Amarantha's throat out with his teeth to avenge what she did to Fair. The passivity is gone the moment the strategic need for it is gone.
True, he does act. Finally, when his power is returned to him.
Yes, and look at his instinct afterward. Once Amarantha is dead and Faye is resurrected as High Fae by the combined power of the High Lords, what does Tamlin want?
He wants to pretend none of it happened.
He just wants to go home. He wants to return to the Spring Court, to rebuild, to heal, and to find peace. That is a foundational desire for a stable, loving partnership. He wants to return to the sanctuary they were building together before the nightmare began.
But that desire to just go home is profoundly tone-deaf to what Fair has just become. She is fundamentally, irrevocably changed.
She's immortal now, yes.
It's not just the immortality. Tamlin's instinct to return to the Spring Court and pretend everything can go back to normal completely ignores the devastating psychological damage Fair just endured. Let's not forget, she murdered 2 innocent Fae in cold blood to save him.
To save all of them.
Right, but she didn't know the third was Tamlin with a heart of stone. She thought she was murdering a third innocent. She is completely shattered by that guilt.
It's immense trauma. I'm not denying that.
Exactly. And contrast Tamlin's desire to sweep that trauma under the rug with Rysand's parting words to her on the balcony. Rysand doesn't pretend she's okay. He stops, he looks at her, really looks at her, and he validates the horror she is feeling.
By telling her to pity people?
He tells her, be glad of your human heart. Pity those who don't feel anything at all. He recognizes that her crushing guilt, her trauma, is a sign of her surviving humanity. It's not something to just neatly pack away in a suitcase for a trip back to the Spring Court. He honors the reality of what she did to survive.
That's an interesting point, though. I would frame Tamlin's reaction quite differently. Tamlin isn't sweeping it under the rug. Tamlin is equally traumatized, and he is reacting from a place of severe PTSD himself.
I mean, they all have PTSD.
We must remember what he has endured. He has lived for 50 years with a cursed court. He has a literal metal eye embedded in his skull from Amarantha's torture. He carries the immense, crushing guilt of sending his own sentries over the border to die as wolves, just praying a human would kill them to fulfill the treaty.
Which is a whole other moral issue, but yes.
They both desperately need the peace that the Spring Court represents. They are 2 deeply traumatized people who need a sanctuary where they can heal together.
But a sanctuary can quickly become another cage if the trauma isn't addressed.
And let's not forget Raysan's final action in the book. He gives her that cryptic advice about her human heart. And then what happens? He looks at her, he stumbles back in absolute shock at something he sees in her face or feels through their bargain, and he simply vanishes.
Right.
He runs away. He is completely unstable. He is playing his own hidden game. That kind of unpredictable, erratic volatility is the absolute last thing Fair needs right after dying, coming back to life, and struggling to understand her new immortal body. She needs stability. She needs Tamlin.
That volatility, however, is exactly what makes Rhysand the more honest partner in this specific environment. He doesn't pretend the world is safe when it isn't.
Well,
Rhysand's pragmatic, empowering, and actively protective approach, even when it crossed lines into being utterly ruthless, is the sole reason Fair survived to see the end of the book. He established a bond built on harsh truths, shared survival, and undeniable reality, rather than sheltered lies.
sheltered lies is a bit harsh.
But it's true. He didn't just want her to feel safe. He wanted her to be strong enough to survive when safety was literally impossible. And he succeeded.
And I maintain that Tamlin provides the necessary romantic anchor for this narrative. His love is built on care, provision, and ultimate self-sacrifice. He gave up his entire world to keep her safe when he sent her back to the mortal realm. He tore out Amarantha's throat to avenge her death. He offers the sanctuary, the wealth, and the devotion she has desperately needed since she was a starving 8-year-old girl in a freezing hovel. He heals the deepest wounds of her past.
I think what we can absolutely agree on, looking at the text of this first book, is that the climax leaves Fair in an incredibly precarious state.
Oh, without a doubt.
Her transformation from a mortal human into High Fae combined with the severe, untreated PTSD she is suffering from killing those innocents under the mountain, means she is stepping into her new immortal life fundamentally broken.
Completely. The trauma is the undeniable convergence point between our two arguments. Both of these High Lords are attempting in their own vastly different ways to care for a woman who has endured unimaginable horrors.
Yeah.
And we remain in deep disagreement over whether Tamlin's passive, sheltering protection, creating a sanctuary to heal her past, or Rissen's aggressive, manipulative empowerment, forcing her to face reality to secure her future, was the truest form of care under that kind of pressure.
Which perfectly highlights how this source material presents multiple, highly complex facets of love, survival, and trauma response. There is no easy, clean answer here.
Not at all.
And with Fair's new immortal life just beginning, and that lingering, terrifying bargain of 1 week a month with the night court still hanging over her head, there is a tremendous amount of complexity left to explore in her future.
Exactly. When survival, magic, and trauma enter the picture, the clean lines of a traditional romance completely shatter. You don't just get a simple fracture that you can put a cast on. You get 1,000 fragmented pieces of the human psyche, and no single cure fits all of them.
Well said. Sometimes you desperately need a quiet sanctuary and a paintbrush to rest your soul. And sometimes, you need the brutal triage surgeon to ensure you survive the night.
Right. And the listener will have to weigh the evidence from this first text, look at the mechanisms of how these two men operate, and decide whose approach to healing those fractures they find more compelling.
Absolutely.
We leave that verdict to you.